Hi. Here is my coming out story. Oh, hi, Fozzie. I'll just jump into it. So basically, growing up, I mean, hindsight's 2020. I think anyone can say that, especially people who are out now. If I'm flashing back, I remember in sixth grade, I came home from school and I said to my mom, "How do you know if you like boys or girls?" And she was like, "Oh," it was a little quiet. And then I told her that I was nervous that I was gay. Like, how do you know if you're gay? What if I'm gay? I remember that being on my mind, knowing that that could be a possibility and that it was potentially a bad thing to me at that time and maybe like to society at that time. So she, trying to comfort me, said that I wasn't gay. And now, obviously, we think it's funny because if your kid is asking that, hint, hint, and if you're so worried about it, like, and it's on your mind, there's probably something there. At least there was for me. From there, I kind of shoved it down, obviously, for a little while. I remember being really fixated on having a threesome. Like, that was my kind of way to explore hooking up with a woman. And in my head, that felt really safe because then there was a man there. And that became kind of like my bucket list item. At this point, I'm in high school. So then in college, I do have a threesome and it was fun. Anyway, so that happened and I was like, wow, this was so fun. And then I kind of shoved it down again for a few years, which is really funny because you might think that would be the aha moment. Let's just be honest. I was drunk during the threesome. I was also like 20, maybe 21. No, 20. And I remember some of my flashbacks, like the hot kind of like clips in my head, were mostly of the other woman and like her being excited, you know what I mean, and all that. It might have been obvious to someone else that if like that was the most memorable part for me, that was the most memorable part for me. I kept on going, thinking I'm straight, had this experience. I even hooked up with that guy again, and it like wasn't really the same without the girl there. Although he is hot, it was probably a me thing. Who's to say? When I was drunk, I would go on Netflix and literally just type in lesbian. It's so funny because I actually kind of have blocked that out. And I was straight then. I finished college. In my head, I'm straight at this point. I've just had this threesome. And then post college, I was pretty like adamant about having my own friend group. Like I went to school and then moved to a city that was like 20 minutes away. I don't want to kind of fall into this college friend group. I'm going to make new friends. I do. It's fun. Like I feel carefree, but I still am in my kind of hometown, like maybe 30, 45 minutes away from where I grew up as well. So it's college friends. I'm running into people from middle school. I'm running into people from elementary school, like cheer camp, you name it. That kind of weighed into why I wasn't maybe like exploring anything yet. Like I was still worried about what other people thought of me and like surrounded by people who knew me. Finally, when it clicks is I go to my friend's birthday party. And at this birthday party, I come a little bit late and there's a girl there who I was chatting with who I didn't know that well before. And I kind of like noticed her more for the first time. And she was standing a little bit close to my face. And now that I know her, I think that's just kind of, she's just like a very like direct speaker, maybe, and like was being locked into the conversation. But I was kind of noticing it as like, oh, I've never had like another woman like this close to me. And I kind of at first was like stepping back and like, oh, interesting. And then after I had a few drinks and like played catch up with them, I realized, okay, I'm not going to move. I'm just going to stay put and see what happens. So then we kind of end up like chatting all night. We're like circling back to each other. We're talking. We're like standing pretty close. I go to after hours, which is very normal for me at this time in my life. And I invite her because now I'm like, I want to hang out. I don't know what that is. I just like want to spend time with this person. But then as I'm getting drunker, my brain starts going, we should have a threesome, which now that we know baby me, we know that means I was definitely attracted to her. I think I even said it out loud. I was like trying to pitch something probably just so we could get in a room together. But obviously it didn't happen. Like that wasn't the vibe. We went to my friend's house after who was like DJing. The second he went to the bathroom, we started making out. It was honestly so hot. And that was the moment for me where I was like, oh, like this feels right. This is what I wanted to do, like not the threesome. And it was really clear because I had been dating this guy at the time, dating loose terms, who I was super attracted to, like is really hot, I think objectively, but just I'm really attracted to. And after kissing her, I remember immediately thinking, like, whoa, this feels like kissing him, if not even better. And then she and I did end up like hanging out a little bit and like getting close. But ultimately, like, the journey wasn't for us to date. It was just like that was a big moment for me. And maybe not as much for her. Like, what was funny was she said at the time, like the next morning, she was like, why aren't you, like, you're so calm, you're not freaking out. And the first time I kissed a girl, I was freaking out. And I think because I was older, I was what, 23 maybe? So not older, but like old enough to know what felt good. Like if I was 16 or like 18 and you don't really know what you like yet sometimes at that age, I think I would have been confused and like maybe upset. But I was old enough to know how to listen to my body. Like, oh, this felt good. I know it doesn't feel good. Like I had hooked up a little bit already, not like a ton, but to know what I liked and like what my body responded to, and it like did respond to that. After that, I put my Bumble and Hinge on both, or just women, or just like started poking around. It took me a really long time to find my type, which now like also doesn't matter. You don't need to have a type. You can just kind of do what makes you happy. And ultimately, my type is more energetic than it is physical. But there was definitely a few people that I matched with that I realized later were actually just friends, like just really pretty girls that I think I wanted to hang out with. And then I would like ghost on the DM, or like there wasn't really sexual tension when we hung out because they were just kind of like pretty girls that were either like me or my friends that I wasn't ultimately attracted to. I just still had this kind of like male gaze in my head of what was objective. Like they're just objectively beautiful and like I should like them and I should match with them. And maybe that felt good for a moment, but then longer term when I started to find people who I like really, when I listened to myself, was like, oh, that person gives me butterflies. Like that wasn't my type. My type isn't usually super feminine unless it's someone, let's back up. My type is someone who's a little bit more dominant or holds a little bit of masculinity, either of those. So that could be someone who's feminine, who's more forward and like assertive. I think that's really hot. Or even if they're a little quieter but really confident, especially when it gets down to it, like that's really hot. It doesn't really come down to the physical stuff, although like, so I'm pansexual, which means I'm open to anyone. I tend to lean a little bit more like non-binary or masculine, or like even maybe like a woman who presents feminine but like kind of dresses a little bit more masculine. Like to me, I typically want to be the more feminine person in a relationship. Okay, so from there, I tell my family. My mom immediately asked if I was, one, going through a phase. Is it just a phase? Hence the card game I created called Just a Phase, which is meant to kind of talk about the coming out journey. You can buy the cards at any of my bios. That's for another time to talk about them. And two, she asked if I was going to miss, which is unhinged, and so my mother. And I said, there are other ways to scratch that itch. And she immediately was like, la, la, la. And I was like, you brought it up. But we're very close. We're more like sisters. So she just like went right out with it. I think she had a hard time with it for a little bit. She told me that she hung up. And she called me back 5 minutes later with like more legitimate not legitimate, but like deeper questions. And then after that, she said she called a friend who had a queer child also and asked them, how they navigated it. And she's ultimately made so much peace. And honestly, I think is happier because my relationships have been healthier and better. Shocker. And then I told my dad, and he immediately thought it was the last guy that I had dated's fault because he was kind of like not super sweet. So that was kind of a funny response. Although we would love to blame it on someone, it's not his fault. And this was always here. And also, I think he kind of felt more comfortable. Like I remember going to stay at someone's house. Me and my stepmom were like, we feel a little bit more comfortable that you're staying at a woman's house and like not worried about you. So that was, I think, ultimately a plus. My siblings, we're from California, Bay Area. Like they didn't really care, weren't really surprised, especially my older two. I think my sister closest in age to me, I think the only thing that was weird is that we're so close that it almost felt like there was a part of me, weirdly, I feel like I'm going to cry, which is insane, that she didn't know, which is rare for us because we know, like she knows me better than I know myself. Who knew this was going to be a sister podcast? So I think that was weird at first for her. At least like that's what I felt from her. Like it was weird for her to process something about me that was like completely outside of the realm of what she knew of me. And it kind of, again, like took a few weeks and like she asked some pretty like serious questions, some that pissed me off, but she was very honest and we talked it through. And ultimately, like she's also so supportive and like understands me really well now and is amazing. All of my family was wonderful. I had like no pushback. I feel really lucky in that sense. And I was of an age where I like think I had dropped a lot of internalized homophobia. Part of the attraction stuff that came later and like part of finding your type, if this is something that you're working on, is I had to really drop years and years of male gaze. Am I attracted to this person? I think that objectively attractive thing I was saying was objectively attractive to men. So I really had to let go of that. And I didn't really even realize I was doing that until I came out. Like I went to a breathwork class and I remember I started crying because I realized like I hadn't really had experiences, especially sexual ones, where I had not thought about how I looked to them, especially to a man, but in general, like to the other person, like fully being in my body and not considering what I looked like or what the gaze was, what this relationship looks like from the outside, what this date looks like from the outside. Like that was hard for me to drop and shed. And I think coming out was like the best way to do that. But it would have taken me, I would have had to do that anyway, even if I was straight. It just, I think is something you do as you age and let go of. Like when you're younger, you care so much what like the random high school guy, college guy thinks of you. And then as you get older, you kind of end up being for your girls and like dressing for women and hanging with women. And like you care less about that. And the male attention is such an added plus, but you feel better in your body, I think. So that was basically that coming out journey. And then it was COVID when I fully came out. So I wasn't really able to physically explore as much as I would have liked to right away. I was on the apps and I remember like a girl from my sorority, she saw me on the app and shared it on her Finsta, which was such a thing then. Like I still have my Finsta. It's really fun to look through, honestly. Let's bring them back. And I was like a little upset because someone else sent me a screenshot and I hadn't really come out to anyone yet. So she, I think, was being funny that we matched and like thought it was cute. And ultimately, like, we did end up hanging out and it was fun, but I wasn't really ready to tell people yet. It did feel a little intense. And that's kind of when I think I realized I wanted to leave the city I was in. I was like, okay, I know too many people here. I don't feel like fully free and fully relaxed doing this in this city. And once COVID happened, I moved. I went to Colorado. I talked to a lot of people online. I had an LA chapter too. I talked to people here. I hooked up with some people. I dated people. And I really felt like I got to explore. And honestly, talking to a lot of people at once was fun. That was kind of the good part of like doing the apps first, was because I got to talk to so many different people, or even like meeting up with people, like talking on the phone, sending voice notes, doing like DMs, whatever. I think lean into that. It's a good way to flirt and like learn what you like with a little bit lower of stakes. And then by the time you meet up with someone, you're usually already very attracted to them. So that's my advice. And it's still a journey. Like I'm in my first long-term, well, kind of second long-term queer relationship. I'd been in a few others, but this is my longest. It's 3 years. It feels like I'm still learning a lot. What I've learned is communication with the queer community is better than anything you could ever imagine. Like everybody has been so open and honest and communicative. I'll meet someone and they're on such a different journey, either like I've dated people who are like changing pronouns or changing their name. Like there's so much open-mindedness, and I think it's a really beautiful space to be, and you can be anyone you want. Like everybody in this space has been completely wonderful, especially in LA, and I'm so grateful to be surrounded by like such strong, smart people who really know themselves better than anyone I've ever met, because they've all gone on journeys to really like kind of fight for who they are and like be really honest with themselves. So if you're coming out, thinking of coming out, you will be welcomed into a community with open arms. And okay, I think that's all for my first long form video. Bye guys, love you.